Okay, I'm Tecumseh Fitch, and here's another Praat tutorial. This time we're going to see how to measure formants. So let's start with a couple vowels from me, from a human, a male. A, So I'm using A and is pretty close to sort of evenly spaced formant, so it's always a good place to start. So let's just bring this up in the View and Edit window, and we'll see our spectrogram, which looks pretty good. And you can see very clearly, and this is often the case in human vowels, you can really see these clear lines that represent the formant frequencies. So we can see 4 formant frequencies here in a range from about 500 hertz up to about 3000 hertz. And that's about what we would expect. So in humans with a vocal tract length of 15 to 20 centimeters, we would expect, 4 to 5 formants in this range. So that seems right, a sanity check. And now this is our A and here's our And you can see that the formants are a little bit more evenly spaced than the A. Okay, so here's what you do. You go up to the formant menu and you say show formants. And now we see these little red speckles that represent Praat's formant estimates using its current parameters for everything here. So now let's go to formant settings, and these are the standard settings, I believe. Yes, so those are the standard settings that we see here. And it looks pretty good for the A. The first formant looks fine. There's a bunch of jumping around and noisiness here. We can see we're getting a little bit of energy up high. So what I'm going to do now is change these formant settings to make this look better. So I'm going to go to formant settings, and here's my window. Whoops, let's make a little room there so you can see it. Okay. So basically the most important settings for the formants are the formant ceiling, the number of formants. Well, those are the two that really matter. Okay, so the formant ceiling says up to what frequency should Praat be looking for formants. And I can already see that this is a little bit high because we don't really have any clear formant energy up there. So I'm going to make this 4,500 in my case and say apply. Okay, that didn't get better, and the reason is that now we're looking for too many formants in that range. So as we already said, there's about 4 formants in that range. So let's reduce this number to 4. And now, at least for the A vowel, let's just focus on this A vowel. That's looking pretty good. One other thing you notice is all that dancing around. We can decrease that dancing by just making the window length over which Praat is calculating the LPC longer. So it'll dance around less. Let's try that. And now it's really looking pretty good for the A vowel. So let's just focus on that, and you'll see that we've got formants at about 420 hertz, 1,800, 2,200, and a little above 3,000. Okay, and that's about right. The only other thing, you can see that we're getting some energy before the vowel actually starts, and we can control that using the dynamic range. So if we lower the dynamic range a bit and say apply, now our formant tracks are more or less what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK for this. By the way, if I wanted to have fewer points, I would have to modify that in the time step strategy. It's a bit hidden away in Praat. But now I can say extract visible formant contour, and now I've got a formant object that I could, for example, draw in our paint window. Okay? If you wanted to save this for a publication. All right. And just as a sanity check, we can look at what those numbers represent. So I've got a little Excel spreadsheet here, and the way we do that is we calculate what's called formant dispersion. At least quick and easy, we calculate formant dispersion, which is basically the difference between the successive formants. Okay? And I've got a sort of standard schwa vowel right here, and that's the spacing would be 1,000 hertz, and 1,000 hertz corresponds to the 17.5 centimeter standard human vocal tract. If we look at my vowels, remember we had about 500, 1.1, and 2.4. The average spacing between the formants there is about 950. So if I type this in, I get about 18 centimeter vocal tract length. And since I'm a relatively tall man, and I was actually lowering my larynx when I did that, that's probably a correct value. Okay, so this is all by way of just doing a sanity check. For humans, not usually an issue because the Praat standard settings are going to be pretty close to correct. We just massage them. But for animals, things might be rather different. Okay, so now let's move on to a different species. We're going to take a pig, and I've actually chosen this pig, so it's a pretty big pig, and it's not that different from mine. So the spectrogram settings, etc., will work. So here's Zeus. Okay, and you'll notice it's a very low fundamental frequency, and he sounds big. He's a big pig, so it will probably be also lower formant frequencies than mine. So let's bring that up and see what it looks like. Oh God. So we can see quite a mess here. I'm going to turn off the formant so we can just examine it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is lower our ceiling. So we'll lower this way down to about 3,000 hertz and see how that went. Oops, 3,000 hertz. Oh, and that immediately looks much better. So basically, just leaving it at those settings, and then we'll try and get it a little less jerky by increasing the window length again. That looks better, and now we've got all this. It's detecting formants outside of the call because the dynamic range is too large, so let's try that with 10, maybe a little bit less than that. 8 decibels dynamic range, bingo. And now we've got clear formants for that. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 formants. And if we just took these bottom ones, let's see, 242, let's see. I'll put them into the spreadsheet as I talk. Okay, so we've got about 250, 780, 1,300, and 2,200, 2,189. Okay, and that gives us, okay, a low formant dispersion of about 650, and that would correspond to a vocal tract of 26 centimeters long. And the pig's head is about 35 centimeters long, so 26 centimeters sounds about right. Okay, now what this illustrates is the importance of knowing something about the anatomy of the animal that you're talking about. So it should be obvious that the vocal tract length of a mammal can't be much longer than its head. So if you have a measure of the skull or the head of the animal that's vocalizing, you should expect a vocal tract length which is in that range. And I'll explain how to calculate the how to use these Hertz numbers to calculate the vocal tract length in another video. But again, that's using formant dispersion, and if you just Google that, you'll find the papers that explain how to do it. But essentially, you calculate the average formant dispersion, and then you use that with a little formula to figure out what the vocal tract length would be. And so if you're doing a cat, say, with a 10 centimeter skull, and you get a 20 centimeter vocal tract length, that's probably not correct. Now there are exceptions. So some animals, for example, deer, have a much longer vocal tract because they lower the larynx way down. So this is not a hard and fast rule, but if you're just starting off with a species, and in this case pigs or let's say dogs, then it's pretty safe that the vocal tract length is going to be roughly what the skull length is, a little shorter normally. Okay, that's it for the basics. There's lots more you can do with formants, and there are several tricks to avoid getting caught in errors, but this gives you an overview of how to do it.